Righty, guys. Hey, so I know the other video cut off, but I assume that you guys already know, the power of the subconscious. I think the conscious is only 7% that really we have, that we use, and it's about 93% of all of our actions, decisions, thoughts, feelings come from the subconscious. So, the best time to access it is when you're about to fall asleep, because before, you slip into REM. So I'm going to read a story from Neville Goddard, The Power of Imagination. This one is actually The Law and the Promise. I think there's a few different books within this one. So this one's called Subtle Threads. All you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. Blake. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being by virtue of the support they receive from such imaginal activities. The part which imagining the wish fulfilled plays in consciously creating circumstances is obvious in the series of stories. You will see how the telling of one story of the successful use of imagination can serve as a spur and a challenge to others to try it and see. One night, a gentleman rose in my audience. He said that he had no question to ask, but would like to tell me something. This was a story. When he came out of the armed forces after World War II, he got a job that gave him take-home pay of 25 a week. That was decent money back then. Um, After 10 years, he was making 600 a month. At the time he bought my book, Awakened Imagination, and read the chapter, The Pruning Shears of Revision, through the daily practice of revision, as set forth there, he was able to tell my audience 2 years later that his income was equal to that of the President of the United States. In my audience sat a man who, by his confession, was broke. He had read the same book, but he suddenly realized he had nothing with the use of his imagination to solve his financial problem. He decided he would try to imagine himself as the winner of the 5-10 pool at Caliente Racetrack. In his words, in this pool, one attempts to pick winners in the 5th through the 10th races. So that is what I did. In my imagination, I stood sorting my tickets and feeling as I did so that I had each of the six winners. I enacted the scene over and over in my imagination until I actually felt goose pimples. Then I saw the cashier giving me a large sum of money, which I placed beneath my imaginary shirt. This was my entire imaginal drama, and for 3 weeks, night after night, I enacted this scene and fell asleep in the action. After 3 weeks, I traveled physically to the Caliente racetrack, and on the day, every detail of my imaginative play was actually realized. The only change in the scene was that the cashier gave me a check for a total of $84,000 instead of currency, TK. After my lecture, the night the story was told, a man in the audience asked me if I thought it possible for him to duplicate TK's experience. I told him he must decide the circumstances of his imaginal scene himself, himself, but that whatever scene he chose, he must create a drama he could make natural to himself and imagine the end intently with all the feeling he could muster. He must not labor for the means to the end, but live imaginatively in the feeling of the wish fulfilled or realized. 1 month later, he showed me a check for $16,000, which he had won in another 5 to 10 pool at the same Caliente racetrack the previous day. This man had a sequel to his most interesting duplication of TK's good fortune. His first win took care of his immediate financial difficulties, although he wanted more money for future family security. Also, and more important to him, he wanted to prove that this had not been an accident and that the so-called law of percentages would give way to proof for him that his imaginal structures were actually producing this miraculous reality. And so he dared to put his imagination to a second test. He continues.